how others in the country fared with this type of question, which can be quite interesting to read as well. So, in this case, it's going straight into question 1, but the same as previous papers, remember to fill in your centre number, your candidate number, your legal name, and check how many pages there are. Bear in mind for this paper, this is a 2-hour exam, so we want to make sure that we've got enough time to be able to do all that we need to do. So, in question 1A then, we've got components of the endocrine system have a role in control and communication in the body. Answer the following questions about the endocrine system using the words from the list. We've got glucagon, pituitary, insulin, adrenaline, adrenal, ovaries, thyroid and testes. You can use each word once, more than once, or not at all. So there's a lot of information being given already at the top of that page, which can put you off being able to actually answer the question. So it says, which gland is located just above the kidney? So you're looking for one of these words that is actually a gland. So within here, we know that the ones on top of the kidneys are the adrenal glands. Okay. Which hormone lowers the concentration of glucose in the blood? So we're talking about a hormone, and in this case it's coming from the pancreas, and it's the one that's going to take glucose and convert it, so that's going to be insulin. Okay. Which gland has a role in regulating other endocrine glands? Okay, this question could be made for me because that one is the gland that is located at the base of the brain. That is our pituitary. And oh look, I should have read ahead to the next question. Question 4, which gland is located at the base of the brain? It's pituitary again. Okay, so the examiners have said that question 1AI and 1A.EI2 were both answered correctly by nearly all candidates. The correct responses, though, were not as high for the second part of the question, but were still well answered. So there's a lot of people not knowing that the pituitary gland is that master gland in the body. It is regulating all the other endocrine glands within the endocrine system. So very important gland, and when it stops working, it can have rather nasty knock-on effects. Okay. Question 1BI. The pancreas has a function within both the endocrine and the digestive systems of the body. Identify 2 endocrine functions of the pancreas. So identify is just a statement. It's just giving them a little bit of information as a sentence, and we've got 2 points to give. Don't go giving more than 2. Try to avoid that list rule, because if you say something wrong, they might apply that and then you won't get as many marks. So, we're looking for functions of the pancreas. So we know, and from our previous question, the pancreas produces insulin. Okay. And what's insulin's job in there? Well, that is to lower your blood glucose levels. Okay, so that's a response that sort of ties together. You could also have said it produces glucagon, and glucagon increases blood sugar because that converts our stored glycogen from the liver back into glucose when we need to regulate our blood sugar. Okay, most people on this one seem to have answered with a focus on insulin and its impact on blood glucose. Those who did not answer the question well just stated hormones, had no clear indication of the specific ones or of their role within the system. So watch out, make sure that you know that the pancreas is involved in the production of insulin and glucagon and their roles within both the digestive system and the endocrine system. Okay, 1BII. Identify, so another statement, two digestive functions of the pancreas. So this is the other side of it. So what does the pancreas produce that helps in the process of digestion? Well, it produces two things. It produces enzymes, which we know are chemical scissors. Enzymes are going to be produced like lipase and amylase, and they will break down the food that they are specific for. So lipase is specific for lipids, which are fats. Amylase is specific for starches, which are carbohydrates. People often wonder how that comes about, and that's because starches' proper fancy name is amylopectin, so it makes sense. Amylase, amylopectin. Okay, the A's bit usually corresponds to the chemical that it works on. I guess lots of people couldn't spell it, so they just write starch. It also produces pancreatic juice. Pancreatic juice is involved in neutralising stomach acid, but it also has a role to play in the breakdown of food, again, fats, carbohydrates and proteins. So they're asking us for two digestive functions. We want to try and link them together so that they correspond. So I'm going to put the enzymes one because I think that one is an easier one to remember. So enzymes are produced, e.g. lipase, okay, and amylase. Okay, and our second thing, what do they do with those? Which break down, in this case, fats and carbohydrates. Okay, that scores us our 2 marks. Looking at what the exam board have said, a few responses also gave endocrine functions for this question. It was not as well answered as the previous one, so make sure you are thinking specifically about something digestive. Those with correct responses tended to focus on the enzyme function or the neutralising of the chyme, the stomach acid. Okay, now we've got a pretty picture. So, pretty picture is not just there to make the page look good, I actually need to use it. So the diagram shows parts of the digestive system, including the pancreas and the liver. And it's been labelled A to E, and they've labelled pancreas and liver separately. So the liver, look, is that triangular shaped organ up here. And the pancreas is here, and it's almost like a leaf shape. So look for the leaf shape. That's how you know it's the pancreas. So we're going to be given a structure, and we have to apply the letter to it for the part that it is referring to. So which part is the pancreatic duct? Well, that's got to be part of the pancreas, so that is letter C. Which part is the stomach? Well, the stomach is this sort of J-shaped bag, so that is going to be letter B. The bile duct? Well, the bile duct needs to come out from the liver, so the bile duct is here, so that is labelled letter D. And the gallbladder is just underneath there, under the liver there, attached in to our bile duct, and so that is letter E. And then the last one it's asked for is the esophagus. Well, it's not quite so obvious here because it's been cut quite small, but there would be the esophagus, so that's labelled A, and that would go behind the liver and lead in there into the stomach. Okay, most people got that right. The most common incorrect response was about the gallbladder, so make sure you pay particular attention to where the gallbladder is within there. If you know that the pancreas is the leaf shape, that the stomach is that J shape, and that the liver is the triangle shape, then the gallbladder should be obvious as being the little blob sticking off the bottom of the liver. Okay, question 1D. Complete the sentences about digestion in the stomach. You can use the words from the list. You can use each word once, more than once, or not at all. So we've got hormone, cell, churn, enzyme, digest, protein, acid, mechanical, alkali, chemical. So when food enters the stomach, it is mixed with digestive juices. The muscular walls of the stomach churn the food, so they work a little bit like a washing machine, with the juices, which is called mechanical digestion. Okay. The stomach produces acid, which helps to destroy bacteria. It also produces the enzymes that breaks down large protein molecules into smaller ones. This is called chemical digestion. Remember, enzymes are chemical scissors. Now draw those. Snip. Chemical scissors. Chop up long chains into shorter ones. Some candidates confused chemical and mechanical digestion, so it's worth making sure that you're not thinking about the fact that it's the digestive juices that are involved in there. Whilst those juices will contain acid and enzymes, we haven't spoken about them specifically there. We're talking about the mechanism of the stomach and the movement of it, therefore that is mechanical digestion. Okay, question 1E, we've got Nina is 45 years old and has developed cirrhosis of her liver. This is caused by a build-up of fat in her liver cells. Discuss the possible impacts of cirrhosis on Nina's lifestyle. You should include at least 2 different types of impact in your answer. So we've got to have 2 types of impact, and the command word is discuss. And it's looking at cirrhosis on Nina's lifestyle. There are 8 marks awarded for this question. I think they've clipped this space shorter on this with them not giving you any answers to go with it. So let's have a look at what the exam board said first. Some candidates explained the biological basis of cirrhosis, which was not required. However, many candidates provided a good discussion on the impacts on lifestyle. The most common area for discussion was the impact of socialising, with candidates commenting on the issues in not wanting to go out with friends due to not being able to drink alcohol or dietary restrictions. So we've got to think here about our physical impacts, our emotional impacts, impacts on communication and impacts on the social side. So really we're looking at pies, just like we did when we were doing units 2 and a little bit in unit 1. So we've got physical, intellectual, emotional and social. So the communication would fit into the intellectual side of it. So to get level 3 on this question, which is 7 to 8 marks, they're looking for at least 2 different types of impact. You have to fully detail your discussion. It should be logical and factually accurate. So I think we'll do a little plan for this one. Let's put a plan in place. Okay, I'm going to do a bit of a grid. So we will have physical, intellectual, and I'll put next to that communication, emotional and social. Okay, what sort of things could we put into that then for physical? Well, when somebody's suffering with cirrhosis, in terms of their symptoms, they may be suffering with fatigue and tiredness. They may be suffering with jaundice. Remember, that is yellowing of the skin, and you see it particularly in the whites of the eyes. They may suffer from edema. If you can't remember, that's swelling, particularly in the lower portions of the body, so in the legs. They might have some side effects from medication that they have to take. Side effects of meds, which could lead to then them having further issues which are work issues, problems going for exercise, unable to look after themselves personally, so washing their hair and cleaning themselves, personal hygiene. They may end up becoming housebound. So in terms of our physical effects, we can think there side effects of meds could lead to work issues, mobility issues, unable to care for self. Okay. What about our emotional things then? Well, people may find that they have a loss of independence. They have really itchy skin. I don't think I'd put that into emotional though. I'm going to put that into physical. Itchy skin. Okay. They might be waiting for a transplant. And whilst they're waiting for a transplant, they may need care from other people. So that might make them frustrated, depressed, stop them sleeping as well, make them feel guilty. People don't like having that loss of independence. So, my battery's going, dearie me. So it could be awaiting transplant. So need care, leading to feelings of guilt, that they're a burden, depression, insomnia, can't sleep. Okay, how could this affect us intellectually? We could end up with memory loss or confusion. So this could lead to isolation. So leading to isolation and an inability to express their feelings because they're not quite sure why they're feeling them. Okay. Social impacts then. So they've got to change their diet. So changes to diet. So cannot eat out with friends. Okay. They can't go to work, so inability to work. No contact with colleagues. And it can become very isolating and very lonely. Working from home, I think we've seen a lot of that through the pandemic, leading to people feeling that way. They will have to stop drinking alcohol. So again, that's going to have that can't go out with friends side of it. Of course, you can go out with friends and not drink alcohol, but for some people, mentally, that they're unable to make that sort of jump between them. So we're looking at using those, at least two different types of impact. So pick the two that you feel you can explain the best. I think physical and emotional go quite well together, or the physical and the social go quite well together. It's difficult sometimes to get the intellectual ones into there, but let's have a see if we can write ourselves an answer. So I'm going to say, let's see, possible impacts of cirrhosis. So the physical impact could be that Nina, as that's the person in our thing, is tired a lot of the time and suffers with jaundice. Okay. She may have edema in her legs, making it difficult to work. We can then link that to our social impacts. So this may have a social impact on Nina, as she would be isolated from work colleagues. Running out of space, I'm going to stick another page in so I can write on it. Where did I get up to? Isolated from work colleagues. Okay, go back to the physical. So Nina may have other physical issues, such as becoming housebound, and having to eat a healthier diet. This may prevent Nina from socialising with friends by having a meal out. Okay, and I think I might just add into there about the alcohol. Alongside this, the inability to drink alcohol when out may stop Nina wanting to socialise on an emotional level. Okay, and that should do us. Let's have a look at question 2. So, here we are looking at LO4. This diagram shows a synovial joint. Complete the table using letters from the diagram. Last one has been done for you. So we want to know which part is pointing to the synovial capsule. And the capsule is here, so it's surrounding the synovial fluid, and that is letter Q. Which one is pointing to the cartilage? And the cartilage is the part that stops the bones from rubbing together. It's a little bit like a shock absorber on both sides of the bone, so that is part S. The synovial fluid, we know that that is going to be inside of that capsule, so that is T. And the tendon. So the tendon on here is labelled as part R, whereas P is going to be the ligament, and we've got U as the bone. I'm just going to label that. Okay, it says candidates are becoming very skilled in these labelling questions. This question was very well answered. Most common error was labelling tendon as P. So that's why we've looked at that, to make sure that it is not. Okay. Question 2b. The joint in the diagram is a hinge joint. Name 2 other types of joints. So the easy ones here are the ball and socket and the pivot joint. There are others. You can talk about sliding and gliding joints, fixed joints, saddle joints, condyloid joints, anything except hinge, because they've mentioned hinge in the question, but I think ball and socket and pivot are the 2 easiest ones to actually remember. Question well answered again. Some students did respond with hinge, which was not given as it was in the question, while others identified body parts, for example, elbow components of joints, for example, synovial. So make sure you know your types of joint. Question 2CI. Identify, there's our command word, one malfunction of the musculoskeletal system and one symptom associated with the malfunction that you have identified. Well, if you actually have looked at your different things, we've got 3 that we can choose from. So we have osteoarthritis, osteoporosis and rheumatoid arthritis. I'm going to pick for this one osteoporosis. Okay, and what's the symptom of that? Well, osteoporosis means that the people's bones can fracture very easily. They end up with a curved spine and they sort of end up almost shrinking, so they look like they've lost height as well. So a symptom that I'm going to give them, it's just zoomed in, is bones fracture easily. Now, avoid saying brittle or weak bones. That's too vague an answer. We need to be saying what's actually happening to the bones, and that is about the fracture. So, the 3 potential options were all commonly selected. Some candidates did respond with arthritis on its own, which was accepted, but candidates need to be more specific in future. So that means just because they accepted it last time does not mean they will accept it next time. Now they've told them. A minority responded with diseases that either were not in the specification or affected a different body system, for example multiple sclerosis, which we learnt about in LO5. In terms of symptoms, most candidates gave correct responses for osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. Only a minority provided incorrect answers. This was often due to a vague response such as pain or swelling. For osteoporosis, less candidates gave correct answers, and this was due to them writing broken bones, which was a common response, which was too vague. We needed to say bones fracture easily. So if that's not on your flashcards, get it added. Okay. 2CII then. So explain the impact of the malfunction that you identified in C1 on the daily life of an individual with this condition. So command word is explain. We're looking for a how and a why. Okay. We have picked osteoporosis, so there isn't the greatest deal of things that we can say about it, but to get level 3 here for 5 to 6 marks we need to have got the impact of the malfunction and give a detailed explanation. You need to show a clear knowledge and understanding of the impact of this malfunction. So if we think about some of the more general effects of it, if you've got issues with your bones and your bone structure so that you end up with lots of fractures, then you're going to have to take extra care to avoid those fractures, because for each fracture you're going to lose bone density. So we'll write that in first. So due to having bones that fracture easily, care needs to be taken to ensure bone density is not affected by frequent fractures. Okay. Looking at it more generally, they're going to have medication, so they may have some side effects to those. They may need to change around work routines and things to be able to attend appointments at the hospital, or they could end up being housebound and being unable to work. That could then lead to financial issues, so leading on to debt and things that way. So we've got a little bit there about osteoporosis in itself. Let's give them something a little more general. So due to medication, individuals may suffer side effects and be unable to work. Okay, impact wise, what's this going to have? This could result in financial issues. Okay, so the exam board said for osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis this question was very well answered, and there's a lot more to say on those, which is why I picked osteoporosis. Candidates who selected osteoporosis generally did not answer as well. Many discussed the impact of pain, but did not make the link that this would only be an issue if they had broken a bone. Okay, so here we're thinking more about the fact that they've got to protect themselves from breaking the bones in the first place. We've got medication causing the side effects in this case, but we could say that not just the medication, but they could become housebound due to the pain if they have a link to fracture. So it's probably better to avoid that bit at the moment. Okay, question 2D. Bone marrow helps to produce cells such as erythrocytes. Erythrocytes are red blood cells. Okay, erythrocytes are components of blood. Describe in detail the functions of at least 2 other components of blood. So our command word here is describe, so this is not just a simple statement. So pick the ones that are going to be the easiest for you to remember. So you could talk about a generalised white blood cell, or you could talk about one of the types that we've looked at. So we're going to have lymphocytes. So lymphocytes are white blood cells. Okay. What is their role? They are the primary defence in the immune system. So they are part of the immune system. What do? They make antibodies. So they produce antibodies that attach to antigen markers on the outside of pathogens. Now you could go on there to talk about the neutrophils, the phagocytes, that come in and do phagocytosis, engulf and destroy. That would be fine. That would be a second type of white blood cell. But personally, I think you should go for a different component that's not so closely linked. So I would go for platelets or for plasma. Platelets is quite a nice one. I'm going to do it in a different colour just so it stands out. So platelets are tiny fragments of red blood cells. They combine with clotting factors, factor 8, and fibrin, which are like little strands, to form scabs. Okay, what's their job? Stops us from bleeding to death, so they prevent blood loss. Okay, this question was well answered. Most candidates achieved a level 2 response, so we're aiming for level 3, 5 to 6 marks here. The function of the white blood cells and the platelets were the main focus of responses. There we go, they're the easier ones to do. Some candidates confused the role of plasma and platelets, and a few candidates produced exceptional answers demonstrating advanced knowledge and understanding. Make sure we check out our different components of blood. Okay, we're on to question 3. So here we have a lovely diagram of the structure of the ear, and we've got some labels on this one, which is quite nice because we haven't had to work out which bits are which. It says use the diagram to answer the following questions. Identify 2 structures found in the inner ear. So there are 3 things within the inner ear that we could talk about, and the inner ear is this section here. So we've got to pick from those, so I'm going to say the cochlea, and the auditory nerve. You could also say the semicircular canals. Which structure contains ampullae? And you find the ampullae here in the semicircular canals. Okay. Which structure is lined with tiny hairs and helps us to maintain balance? So where we're looking here, and this is something, sorry, my brain's not working. same sort of area. We're still looking in the semicircular canals, so we're going to write that. And remember, these tiny hairs, and it's almost like a little spirit level within there. So if you get an inner ear infection, this is what makes you sort of semi-dizzy and a bit fally overy, because you can't balance yourself quite as well as you could, and it's that little section that's not working right. Okay, name the structure labelled X. So looking back, X is, let's give it a different colour here. Okay, and the only thing that's not actually labelled on there really, that's good for us, is the eardrum. You can give it its fancy name if you want, a tympanic membrane, but I would stick to eardrum if I was you. So this says that these questions were, question 3A1 and 3A4 were answered correctly by most candidates. However, 3A2 and 3 were less well answered. So people didn't know what the semicircular canals were for. Some candidates did not provide a response, which is surprising given the terms are provided, while others selected answers not on the diagram. Candidates should take care to read the questions so they know how to answer them. So if you really didn't know, you've got to pick something. Look at that diagram. Where is this possibly going to be? Okay, I know there are lots of things labelled there. You know that the stapes, the incus and the malleus are bones, so they're unlikely to be involved as your tiny hair structures. The pinna is the outside of your ear. The auditory canal, okay, you do see some hairs sort of within there, but it's actually deeper down where they're more useful in terms of the balance side of it. So if it was just the hairs, fine, but we're talking about the balance as well. So it's that inner ear when you get balance. So inner ear infection, you're going to be falling over. Okay. The eustachian tube is also found in the ear. Which statement about the eustachian tube is correct? It converts sound waves into nerve impulses. It amplifies sound waves. It enables vibrations to be passed through the inner ear, or it ensures equal pressure between the outside of the ear and the middle ear. And it's that last one that is correct. No other answers are acceptable, so there must be just one tick within those boxes. It seems that many people struggled with that question and went with the vibrations part of it, which is a common incorrect response. And I think that's because that's what you're thinking is going to be about creating sound, and that's what we see the role of the ear as. So, deafness is a malfunction of the ear. The possible causes for deafness include ageing, blockages in the auditory canal, damage caused by loud noises or infections. We have a command word here. Explain the effects of deafness on an individual and the possible treatments that are available to them. So we're looking for effects of deafness and possible treatments. Okay, so it's a 6-mark question. Again, a levelled response. For level 3, we're looking for a detailed explanation. I would say again you're looking for 2 to 3 points clearly explained. So what have we got? We've got a blockage in the auditory canal. There's something we've been given. That is an effect. So let's start with that. A blockage in the auditory canal and what's it that causes that? Earwax. Lovely. Is going to stop those sound waves from reaching the cochlea. So we'll prevent sound waves reaching the cochlea. Okay, what's that going to mean? Well, if it's not receiving the sound waves, it's not going to communicate then and convert those into electrical impulses. So this stops the sound waves being converted into electrical impulses. Okay, what's the side effect of that? Well, it might mean that people start to feel very isolated because they're struggling to hear other people, and that may make them feel quite frustrated, lower their self-esteem, they may have to start lip reading. So this can result in low self-esteem, as unable to effectively communicate, okay, and feel isolated. Right, so we've got the effect and sort of the impacts of those. We then need to think about the treatments, so I'm going to have to put a new page in because they've cut this and there isn't enough space. So to treat blockages, patients can be given eardrops. Okay. These help to dissolve the earwax or loosen it so it can be syringed from the ear. People may need hearing aids. To enhance sound levels. Okay, so we've got there some effects and we've got some treatments. That should get us our 6 marks. Okay, what did they say? Very few candidates managed to achieve a level 3 response for this question, mainly due to a lack of explanation of treatments. For example, candidates would identify syringing of the ears without going on to explain how it enables sound waves to reach the eardrum. A minority of candidates discussed people needing white sticks to help them. White sticks is generally to do with blind people. So we have got that link because we've talked first about how there is a blockage and how it stops the sound waves getting there. So we are treating the blockage to dissolve that so the sound wave can now get to the person. Okay, question 3D, and we're looking at the nerve impulse in the brain, so we're into LO5. Nerve impulses, oh no, it's still in the ear, well, technically 5, from the ear pass into the brain to be processed into sound. Which part of the brain processes sensory information from the ear? And in this case, we should be ticking the cerebral cortex. And most candidates correctly got that. Question 3E. Kai has had a stroke which has damaged part of his brain. Explain the possible biological causes and lifestyle factors that could have resulted in Kai suffering a stroke. So you'll remember when we looked at this that there were 2 different types of stroke. So it depends which one we are picking because it hasn't actually told us here. But remember, the ischemic stroke is going to be caused by the atheroma, so that's those fatty deposits and plaques within the artery, which are occluding the artery and narrowing the space for the blood to come through. That can lead to blood clots and restrict the amount of blood flow getting to the brain. That damages the brain cells and the brain cells can die. If it's a hemorrhagic stroke, it's a blood vessel in itself is weak and you end up with an aneurysm. So that is when the blood vessel is going to burst on the brain or within the skull, and it's going to lead to bleeding on the brain. Again, that's going to damage the cells, puts extra pressure onto there, which also in turn damages the brain cells. So we need to give that in terms of the biological causes, and then we can give the lifestyle causes to go alongside it. This is an 8-mark question, so let's see if we can do both types of stroke. So we've got hemorrhagic stroke. Hemorrhagic strokes are caused by an aneurysm. Okay, when a blood vessel or a weak blood vessel in the brain bursts, causing bleeding on the brain. Okay, this damages the brain cells due to pressure. Okay, then we can talk about ischemic stroke, so I'll do that in a different colour so it pops up. We've got ischemic stroke, sometimes known as a TIA. Okay, in this case we have got occlusion and obstruction. I have to put a new page in, of the arteries due to atheroma or atherosclerotic plaques. Okay, these are fatty deposits that can restrict blood flow and result in a blood clot. Okay, this reduces oxygen in blood to the brain, so brain cells are damaged. Okay, so we've got our biological causes there. Those are our two types of stroke. Now we need to go on and look at lifestyle factors in terms of the causes from those. So strokes can be caused by a number of lifestyle factors, such as having a high fat diet, leading to increased risk of atheroma because they've got high cholesterol. Okay, we've got lack of exercise, comes up all the time, so that could give you poor circulation. Again, you've got a risk there of obesity, linking into high blood cholesterol and the increased risk of atheroma. So lack of exercise may lead to obesity and an increased risk of atheromas. Okay, that should get us our 8 marks. Right, question 4a. So we've got adenosine triphosphate, ATP, is produced during cellular respiration. Complete the table below by deciding whether each statement about cellular respiration is true or false. So we're here in LO2 now. We've got aerobic respiration produces more ATP than anaerobic respiration. That is true. Aerobic respiration takes place in the mitochondria. Also true. Powerhouse of the cell, location of respiration, converting oxygen and glucose into carbon dioxide and energy and water. Anaerobic respiration needs glucose and oxygen. That's false. Anaerobic respiration takes place in the absence of oxygen. Lactic acid is produced during aerobic respiration. False. It's produced in anaerobic respiration. That's what gives you that feeling of a stitch when you are running and you go into an oxygen debt because you can't breathe in enough oxygen fast enough for the amount of respiration you're doing for the energy that you're using up. A reasonable number of candidates achieved 4 marks in this. The most common error was about aerobic respiration taking place in the mitochondria. So apply that to a little bit of your GCSE biology, remembering that the mitochondria, we say they look a little bit like dead woodlice laying on the backs. Okay, they are there like a bean with the matrix inside them, and that is where respiration takes place. Okay, 4B. Oxygen must pass through the alveoli walls to get into the blood. Which process allows oxygen to pass through the alveoli walls? Is it assimilation, absorption, diffusion, or inspiration? And in this case, it is diffusion. Absorption is involved in the digestive system, inspiration in ventilation, and assimilation is not involved there. That is involved in our liver. So this was a well answered question. Most candidates correctly ticked diffusion. The most common incorrect response was absorption. Okay, question 4C. So we're on to another of our malfunctions. Asthma and emphysema are both respiratory malfunctions. Identify one possible cause for each of these malfunctions. So asthma's a little bit of a difficult one because they haven't come up with a true cause of it, but there can be things that make it worse. So they want a possible cause for it. Could be allergens. That's a good one to remember. Allergens as triggers. And give them an example. So pet hair, or air pollution, dust mites, pollen, anything, tobacco smoke even, can be linked into that. Emphysema, a little bit more worrying because in there you've got destruction of the alveoli walls. Okay, resulting in pockets of air being trapped. The cause could be smoking, it could be dust related, it could be exposure to chemicals. So I'm going to put that in there, by exposure to environmental risks, e.g. chemicals, and those could be chemicals in tobacco smoke, they could be chemicals in a workplace. Okay, misconception here. While you can be genetically predisposed to asthma, it is not a genetic disease. You are not born with it. So this is one of those cases of the gene being activated due to the environment that we live in. Okay, question 4 CII, evaluate. So here we're looking for our positives and negatives, and we need to have 2 or more different care needs. So evaluate the lifestyle changes and the care needed to help an individual manage emphysema. So we're managing emphysema and we need lifestyle changes and care. Okay, it says achieving level 3 on this question was challenging. You needed to evaluate multiple lifestyle changes and care needs. However, it was pleasing to see some candidates were achieving this. Overall, the quality of the responses on this evaluate question was improved on previous exam series, and the most common aspects for evaluation were stopping smoking and using an oxygen tank. Okay, so quite a lot to get into this really. I don't know whether to start on a bigger page. Let me clip that question and we'll take it onto the next page so we've got a longer space to work. Okay, give me a page. There we go. Paste that at the top. We'll have it a wee bit bigger, please. There we go. Right, so let's have a look. So we're looking for things that they can do, the positives and the negatives. We want 2 to 3, so I'm going to go with 2 lifestyle changes and 1 care need for now, and we'll see how we go with that. So we're going to say individuals, need to alter their lifestyles. For example, by giving up smoking. Okay, so we want some positives of giving up smoking. So this would slow the progress of the disease. Okay, and improve breathing. So less likely to be breathless. Okay, what's the negatives of that? Well, it's very addictive, so it's difficult for people to be able to give up smoking just like that. It can lead to mood changes and it may cause people to feel depressed. So we can say, however, this is not easy to achieve due to the addictive nature of smoking, and it can lead to mood swings and possible depression. Okay, that's one of our lifestyle changes. Let's switch colour and go to a second one. So it could be, if it was down to the fact that they have been exposed to something at work, maybe we need to change our job. So a change in job role may help to reduce exposure to harmful chemicals and so slow the progress of the disease. For some people this may be a better job. But for others it may mean that they actually lose income, or that they have a lower job and that they lose their self-esteem and end up in debt. So we'll say, however, for others this may mean lower pay, so a loss of income and a loss of self-esteem and self-worth. Okay, so we've given them 2 lifestyle changes. Now we need to make sure that we've actually covered one of the care needs as well. So what might people need to help them along? So the most common thing is going to be the oxygen cylinders. So in terms of care, individuals may need oxygen cylinders installing at home. Okay, these work on something called a CPAP machine. So the positive is it's going to assist with their breathing, but the negative is that they're going to have to be connected up to that machine whilst they take on board that oxygen. So that's going to stop them having a normal routine. These help with breathing, but individuals need to change routines to use them as they are connected to the machine. Okay, and there we've got 2 lifestyle changes, 1 care need, and that should be enough to get us our level 3. Let's go back and see what they said. Achieving level 3 on this question was challenging as you needed to evaluate multiple lifestyle changes and care needs. I think I've read this already. Overall quality of the responses on the evaluate was improved on previous exam series. Most common aspects were smoking and the oxygen tank. So I think we've got everything that we need in there. And we're going to move on to question 5. So, in question 5, we've moved on to the kidney. So the kidney is part of our LO5. The kidney is a component of the regulatory system. Complete the table using structures from the list. So we've got the calyx, the ureter, the cortex, the medulla, and the urethra. So, the outer layer of the kidney, that is the cortex. Why is my pen not working? Have I picked up the wrong one? Nope. Hang on a minute. Give me a second. I think that pen might have gone flat. Let's just give it a couple of seconds charge. I'll write them in a sec. So we've got the outer layer of the kidney is the cortex, a tube that carries urine from the kidney to the bladder. Okay, so now you've got to think, okay, it's going from the kidney to the bladder, not from the bladder out of the body. So this is the ureter. A chamber that collects urine, that's the calyx, and a tube that passes urine out of the body, that's the urethra. So let's write these in. So we have cortex, we have ureter, we have calyx, and we have urethra. Make sure you've got your urethra and your ureters in the right place. Okay, question 5b. Let's see. Oh, hang on. That was a challenging question for most candidates. The most frequent mistake was mixing up the cortex and the calyx. So knowing that the calyx is the little chambers that collect the urine, and the cortex is that outer part. So when we did our kidney dissection, that was the darker part just on the inside of the capsule. Kidney contains thousands of nephrons. 2 command words here. Identify and describe 2 functions of the nephron. So we need to make sure we're talking about function. That's their jobs. So there are 4 different things we can pick from. Osmoregulation, excretion, ultrafiltration, don't just call it filtering, and selective reabsorption, not just reabsorption. I think the easiest ones here are your osmoregulation and your excretion. They're a bit easier to remember. So if we go with osmoregulation for identify and excretion there, and remembering that excretion is not talking about faeces, that is digestion. Excretion is the removal of urea from the body, for example sweating or urination. So I might write that one first actually. So this is waste products are removed from the blood, e.g. urea. Okay, osmoregulation, what's going on there? Well, that is the regulation of water balance in the body, and it occurs in the collecting duct. So we've got regulates water balance in the body. Occurs in collecting duct. Okay, this was the least well answered question on the paper and the one that was most commonly left blank. Some candidates incorrectly discussed the kidney's role in detoxification, whilst others discussed urine production with no clear links to osmoregulation. So make sure that you've got the correct functions to go with your descriptions. Okay, good, they've removed the diagram, that's helpful, isn't it? Question 5C, name the blood vessel that carries blood from the body into the kidneys. So we've got blood vessel associated with the kidney, it's got to be renal. It's going to be coming away from the heart to come to the kidneys, therefore it's going to be an artery. Okay. Very few correct responses for this one, with the incorrect renal vein being the most common response than the renal artery. And I think it's because people think of it as being like the heart and vein being into the heart, but you've got to think, right, the blood has come away from the heart so that it can get to the rest of the body, and this says blood from the body, so it's got to be an artery that is carrying that. Okay, we should have a diagram here of an artery, and they want you to compare the structure of the artery with the structure of a vein and a capillary, considering their functions in your answer. So we're going to have to do a little bit of imagination here. Well, let's draw some diagrams. We could have, I don't know what the original diagram looked like, but okay, it's a bit like a target. So we've got our lumen, we've got our tunica externa, and we've got our tunica media. On the outside we've got a layer of endothelial cells. Okay, that might not be what the diagram looked like, but at least we've got something to look at. So if we're comparing the structure between them, the artery has the thickest walls. So arteries have thicker walls than veins, because we're doing a compare and contrast here. Okay, they have more muscle and collagen fibre in these walls, and a small lumen to enable them to carry blood at high pressure around the body. Okay. Veins have valves and operate at low pressure. We've already compared our walls for those, so the only other ones we can fit in there is to say that they have a larger lumen. I'm going to go down underneath, a larger lumen than arteries, and thinner walls. Okay, we haven't mentioned capillaries yet, and we've got to get those in as well to get our full 6 marks. So we've got to say that capillaries are 1 cell thick. They have thin walls for diffusion, no valves, and very narrow lumen. Okay, so it says most candidates achieved a level 1 or a low level 2 response. The reason for this was due to vague responses using terms from the diagram, for example, thick outer layer with no clarity or comparison. Candidates need to be clear how the structure of the artery compared with the vein and capillary are similar or different. Many candidates discuss the vessels carrying oxygenated or deoxygenated blood, which was not credited because we were talking about the structure rather than the specific function within this. They said students need to be taught how to address the command verbs. For the command verb compare, students need to know what is similar or different. In this instance, they would be to clearly show how the structure of the artery is similar or different to the vein and the capillary. Okay. Another one where they've lost the diagram. Useful. Question 5DII. The build-up of fatty deposits in the walls of the arteries can lead to coronary heart disease, CHD. Identify 2 symptoms of coronary heart disease. Now remember, when we looked at this, there are 2 different types. One can be heart attack, one could be angina. Both have similar symptoms, but you could actually get the marks for this for saying angina and heart attack. Because angina is a symptom of coronary heart disease, as is heart attack. You could go into the things that go with them, so things like high blood pressure, pain in the chest, pain in the arm or the jaw, unexplained sweating, palpitations, tiredness, dizziness, all those things around it, all of those are acceptable. Okay. And that's not copyright, that's just telling us where they got the diagram of the ear. That is the end of the paper. Not as bad as it could be. Some tricky things on there that have come up, but good that we've seen things like the kidney, the heart, things that we've been looking at, and quite a bit on the LO5 stuff. Remember, LO5 tends to fit itself into so many different areas, and it does have quite a bulk component of the exam paper. I hope you found that helpful. Keep working through your notes. If you've got any questions, send me an email.